Just wrapping up this morning's Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit, it's amazing to think that this is the second year it's been done now, and the second event in a series, I believe, that will be happening this year. Nick, you were at last year's event as well. How does it compare to last year? Are there any big changes, step changes in the industry that you're seeing in the conversation?
Well, there's a complete change in the conversation, which is really great to hear. So last year was focused on shining examples of technology deployment. What I'm hearing now is that conversation about digital twin, how you maximise the use of the digital twin. Really great to hear the conversations around AI, because it's real, it's with us. We're not quite sure where we're going, but we know it's coming, or it's here, depending on where you stand. And what I really liked about this morning is the conversations moved on to societal need. So I don't know whether you noticed, but on my slide we had the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We didn't really talk about social value, but it's almost becoming a prerequisite that you address social value to get your project permitted. And you know, less is more. So if you can avoid scope, you get it for free, you don't have a carbon footprint. It's good business to take 40% more productivity into the marketplace and get infrastructure to be delivered smarter, better, and with less carbon. It's got to be good news, and really great that almost every presentation this morning mentioned it.
I loved it. Almost every presentation was talking about the imperative around carbon, but also everyone was talking about measuring and metrics, and how we're marrying up that project management side to really deliver on the promise of digital transition. Karina, what did you think?
Absolutely. So I love that conversation about measurement and metrics, and that's what I can see us as project managers really engaging now to say, right, how are we going to implement this? And this is our brains kicking into gear, isn't it? So this is, I can see the big picture now. I can see the opportunity, and that's what I think I'm going away from this morning with, is this sense of opportunity. There is so much to play for. There is so much more productivity that we can bring into play. There are so many technological advancements that we can harness. And now we are clicking into, and how are we going to use it? And we saw some great case studies this morning as well, which was super. And also then some great conversations about how do we, as a sector and as an ecosystem, how do we deploy it, which I thought was super.
I love that. Even just hearing you say the word "we" so many times as you're talking, it's such a great feeling to come together as a community as well as an industry, and to really start to think about who we are, what do we want, what do we need, how can we make an impact. Nick, what are your thoughts on what is the biggest opportunity in impact, and what is the number one thing you took away this morning from that, perhaps that you didn't know before?
Well, I was particularly struck by the comment on we're looking at the mega projects, and what about the other 99, 98%? Whatever the percentage is, there's a whole tail of really good, committed, conscientious people who perhaps either don't have the money to invest in technical solutions or don't know that they're available. So I think there's a role we can play in helping them on that journey, because if it is more productive work, the technology gets paid for in itself. And you know, I spent last week in Hong Kong and saw a number of really cool technical solutions that you could deploy tomorrow at relatively low cost that people probably don't know about. And I think we can take that role in government to really push the agenda and set our expectations into not just the tier 1 contractors, but the tier 2s and 3s as well.
Absolutely. It's been really wonderful having this level of expertise in the room, and I can't deny how lucky we are to be in Singapore for this event. To be honest, with this leadership from the Singaporean government, but also the leadership in terms of the speakers that we've had in the room, and the calibre of the delegates that are here today. It really was a bit of a self-appointed 1%, but it really didn't feel like a negative thing. It felt like we have this opportunity to harness the momentum and to unpack it a little bit. Karina, how do you see that unfolding?
Absolutely. So if we are the 1%, we are sitting here with a position of privilege, and we are sitting here with a position of influence. So it's our responsibility now, and our accountability to then give back into the rest of the ecosystem. So I go away with renewed vigour and some trepidation, I must say, to the role that we have to play, both as government, but also as part of that, the 1%, to really help people understand the art of the possible and how we make it happen.
When we say the 1%, of course, we're talking about the broader industry itself and the number of businesses that are actively engaging in the sector.
Indeed.
Those facts and figures from the Global Infrastructure Hub, they were incredible. What do you think you guys could do with some of that data?
So I think it brings to life what we intuitively have known. I've been banging on about the 40% improvement in productivity for a long time. And there's hard evidence and data now based on not just the UK, but the global economies. Everybody wants to do an amazing amount of investment. There isn't the money to go around. There isn't the carbon footprint to carry on delivering at the rate we're doing. So it just reinforces the sense of urgency. So for me, using that data in the conversations, and actually when I reflect on the conversations I have had in the UK with bodies like the Construction Leadership Council, which represents the majority of the major construction contractors in the UK, they want to do a better job. They're coming to the table, perhaps not always with the solutions, but certainly they want to become ambassadors for net zero, and they want to be more productive. So coming along with some ideas on how you might help them on that journey is going to be incredibly powerful.
I love that. I think the private sector quite often doesn't get the credit for delivering the impact that they do deliver on the ground. And of course, it's the government's role to get the settings right for that. But Nick, I loved your comment earlier this morning around how you hoped that the private sector might help government to ask better questions. You know, we don't know what we don't know. I was wondering, Karina, have you got any reflections on that and perhaps some instances where you've learnt from private sector or the vendor and how you've embedded that into the programs that you're running at the IPA?
Oh, all the time. And that's where our innovation comes from, and Nick showed some really great examples of that this morning, didn't he, from Hinkley Point and from Crossrail, where we know that. So we might know what we don't know, but we are reliant on the innovation and the expertise of the private sector to come to the table to say, and this is what you could do. And then our role then is to amplify that as government.
That. So government amplifying the known unknown in a safe and perhaps assuring way for investors.
Yeah. I thought it was really, really insightful when I had a good conversation with the programme director for Lower Thames Crossing. So it's a multi-billion road scheme, and he is passionate about taking the carbon footprint to a better place. And he just went out to the market and said, I want you to tell me what you can do to take 20, 30, 40% out. And the ideas that came back were fantastic. And one vendor came back with 50, 60% saving and ideas that we hadn't thought of. But we asked the question, can you help us? And they could. I think that's going to be the future. We need a two-way dialogue, we need collaboration, and I think together, the technology is not the issue. It's how we come together as a partnership and an industry actually to make a difference.
And that's a great question because it's prescriptive, but it's also kind of principles-based and it's flexible. It's like, here's our problem, but throwing it to industry to actually solve the challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved the flyby that we did, the 6D simulation. And you could see from the questions that were coming in from the room today how excited everybody is about foresight and horizon scanning that's, coming through. And I didn't have the privilege to be here last year, but it's really clear from the case studies and the conversation today that we're not just talking about, implementing now, but the metrics and the iteration that's required to benchmark the data that we have on the projects that we have. My hope is that will lead to the ability to have predictive analysis and foresight more quickly. What are your thoughts on the time it might take for the industry to mature like that?
So I think we're going to see some quite dramatic changes in the next 5 years, if I'm honest, which is why we set the roadmap to 2030. And I say that because it was indicated today, but it's not come out strongly. But the industry needs to transform, and that means changes to suppliers, their role. There are going to be losers, winners. There's opportunities, there's market opportunities, there's new players coming. If you look at the automotive industry and you look at Build Your Dreams as an automotive manufacturer, they are now beating BMW and VW in sales because they've just decided they're going to go for the market. I think that the industry players in infrastructure who can be those integrators, who can think about their carbon footprint and come to the table with smart technologies are going to really be leading players. And those laggards who just want to protect their model and stay as they are going to be left behind and probably out of business if they don't change. So we're entering that unknown, and that's why the conversation about AI is a little bit, I would say, daunting for some, but I think I'm always a glass half full person, so I think it's an opportunity as much as anything else. And those who dare will win, I think.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about being in a room full of built environment, construction and IT professionals. No one's afraid of a bit of complexity, are they?
That's right.
What are your thoughts, Karina?
Just to amplify what Nick said, so who dares wins at this point, I think.